Baki the Grappler, 1994 OVA review. Hiya, I'm that random Cardcaptor. And today we are reviewing, as I said, Baki the Grappler, 1994 OVA. So this series is about Baki Hanma, a young man who has been training in martial arts since he was young. This series focuses on his 13-year-old self. This is the first adaptation of the Baki series. This adaptation likely came out to help promote the manga for the first series of the Baki manga. Since the manga was still ongoing when the OVA came out in 1994, it wouldn't be until 2001 that the series would get a TV version of the first manga Baki, which I will likely cover in a future review video. To give the OVA the attention it needs in this review, I rewatched a few times, like 2 times, once in subtitles and once in dubs. That way I can make a fair comparison. I thought the dub was rather nice, and then the sub was also nice. They work for whoever for whatever preference you might have. So let's get into this review. Let's first start to talk about the story. So from what I could gather, this OVA takes place during a karate tournament. Keep in mind, I have yet to read the manga for myself to know the exact chapters. I believe this covers part of a karate tournament arc, which is developed more in the first season of the 2001 anime adaptation of Baki. Within this OVA, we see Baki face off against Atsushi Suedo and Kosho Shinogi. Don't get too mad if I mispronounce it. I'll try and correct it in a future video or something. Okay, and of course, to no one's surprise, Baki makes out of the intense fights as the victor. Even in the toughest predicaments, he makes it out okay. Now, let's talk about the characters. First, let's talk about Baki. He's a martial artist who enjoys a good fight with just about anyone. Even in tough predicaments, he will try his hardest to be victorious. In his fight with Shinogi, he gives it his all even with nerve damage caused by Shinogi. He's an intense fighter that I am excited to see continue his fight in the 2001 version of Baki the Grappler. Now let's talk about Atsushi, or Suedo, whichever name y'all prefer to remember him by. He was a very quick opponent for Baki to beat, and I'm sure I'll probably catch him later on in the series when I get around to watching the 2001 adaptation. He has potential as a character. Shame we don't get to see him for very long within the OVA. All we get to see is Baki dislocating his shoulder and Suedo coming out of it even more calm and determined to try and give Baki a good fight, even despite, failing and whatnot. Now let's talk about Doppo. He shows up at the karate tournament. He tests Baki's strength out, doing an intense sneak attack on Baki, to which Baki responds with a chew to Doppo's fist, which is a funny scene for me. He seems like a mentor type of character or a scout of sorts. I look forward to reading the manga or watching the 2001 anime to find out more about him. Lastly, we have Shinogi. Shinogi has a fight with Baki in this underground fighting arena. It was very intense to watch. It took everything in me not to look away from the screen, especially during a second viewing. When he ripped the nerves out of his opponents, I felt very intimidated and frightened. I know that that's probably not exactly how damaging some people's nerves goes in a fight, but that was scary, okay? That was just scary. What an intense and terrifying character. But I still think I'll enjoy seeing him again in the 2001 version of Baki the Grappler, so I guess that's one character to really look forward to. Alright, now let's talk about the art style. The art style of this OVA was quite nice for it coming out in, 1994. I believe it probably resembles the earlier art style of the Baki manga before Keisuke's art style changed and improved into how the current Baki looks. It wouldn't be too bad to have this as the current art style in the Baki series, but like many mangakas, the art style is likely to change to fit their style more and to be less like the typical style you'd expect to see when they first entered the manga into the specific publishing firm. A good example of this is how Araki's style for JoJo changed as it reached part 4, part 5, and so on and so forth. It reflects more of his style that he's much happier to do, rather than the typical style of how many shonen manga were during the 80s. Now, what is my overall rating? I give this series a 7 out of 10. Or at least this OVA, because it's one episode. It's not a bad adaptation. I feel like if the studio wanted, they could have done like Ushio and Tora's OVA and expanded into more episodes, but they didn't because it was more of a promotion to the manga, which shows that it worked when the series got an official adaptation in 2001 and then again in 2016 to 2019. In fact, it's still getting a new season probably in 2021, because of delays and whatnot. Now, would I buy it? It might be fun to own and rewatch, but I don't think I would buy it unless I see how I feel about the rest of the series' adaptation. Unless I really enjoy this series and all its adaptations, I'm probably not going to buy the OVA. I feel like it's more for the hardcore Baki fans. Now, where you guys can buy it if you are interested and a hardcore fan of Baki, you can find it on Amazon at a used price. It was licensed by Central Park Media, so it's most likely to be out of print at this point, but if you can't buy it on Amazon as a DVD, I suggest looking for it online to give it a watch and buy the manga from official licensors if you like. Because if you really want the series to continue and flourish, you just gotta support the industry where you can. Don't feel, forced to buy a DVD when you just want to read the manga, or don't feel forced to buy certain series if you don't like it. Buy if you love it, okay? Just buy it for yourself if you love it. Now for recommendations. Recommendation number 1, Beastars. If you like Keisuke's work, you might enjoy the work his daughter has produced. The stories are very different in Beastars, as it's told using anthros instead of just, muscular characters that like to martial arts, do a bunch of martial arts fights and whatnot. And the scenes are a little different, but you can tell that based on their similar styles, that Paru got a little bit of inspiration from her dad. Recommendation number 2, Kenichi the Mightiest Disciple. This is an anime with many fights in it as well. Kenichi seeks out a karate club to become stronger and face his enemies, which I think is a pretty good idea. It's always usually good to try and figure out ways that you can become stronger than your current self to a happier place and stuff that just makes you feel happier. Recommendation number 3, Hajime no Ippo. Ippo is often bullied at school until one day a group of boxers sees his potential and teaches him how to box in order to defend himself. He then joins them to become a boxer for them in future matches. Recommendation number 4, Tiger Mask. A fighter joins the ring wearing a tiger mask. He does not care much for rules and will fight dirty if he must. Not everyone understands his ambitions for doing so, but for now it's probably safer that way. Much like Baki, this series can have some pretty intense fights, or as intense as they can be for a series animated in in the 70s, 80s, and 2010s. And there are many other series that can be recommended after watching the OVA for Baki the Grappler, which you can look at for yourself on My Anime List, Annie List, or Random Anime Generator. Thanks for watching if you got this far. I hope you enjoyed my review. See ya, and go catch that good anime!